I am George Faraj, Senior Health and Safety Management Consultant, and in this episode of the Anticipate podcast, I am pleased to be joined by Tahir Qadir, Health and Safety Service Lead. Welcome to the Anticipate podcast, Tahir. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, George. Pleasure to be part of this podcast.
So, just to set the context, the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, also known as the UN SDGs, and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia Vision 2030 share a common vision of transformation towards a sustainable future, recognizing the crucial role of health and safety in achieving sustainable development. The transformational agenda of both the SDGs and KSA Vision 2030 demand the holistic approach to health and safety that addresses concerns at the individual and organizational level. In this episode, I'd like to talk to you about how health and safety transformation programs have been impacting countries with a zoom in on the KSA Vision 2030 and its endeavors to tackle the issues of poverty, inequality, climate change, prosperity, peace, justice, education, health, social protection, and employment, and realizing the intersecting nature of these issues and the inclusion of them all included in its national strategy. So to start it off, Tahir, I think to set the scene, we've already touched on the KSA Vision 2030. So the first question I would like to ask is, can you please elaborate on how health and safety and why is it a crucial component in achieving the KSA Vision 2030?
Basically, the world is moving towards sustainability, and sustainability has three bigger elements which are overlapping with each other. And the interaction within these three elements is what we call sustainable countries, sustainable goals, or sustainable programs or strategies we develop. We call it sustainable because of the three elements interacting, which is the social, environment, and economic. Now, since the United Nations issued the Sustainable Development Goals, the world globally, the countries, they are aligning themselves with these SDGs. By 2030, most of these goals they target to achieve. And that's how the countries entirely globally, they are developing their visions, which are aligning with this vision, United Nations vision. On the same note, Saudi Arabia, they developed their 2030 vision. And they have incorporated all the requirements within their plan. For example, some of the targets which KSA under their Vision 2030 they have developed is basically related to health or living healthy, being healthy, like for example, to increase the ratio of the individuals who are exercising, which for the time being is once a week. Basically, their individuals, they want to increase it to 40%. So almost 3 times they would like to increase the health and living standard of the people who are there in Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Same is the case with developing cities. Safety is one important element. And when we talk about the security and safety, these are interchangeable words when we are talking in terms of the cities. So a safe city is a secure city, and its secured city is also supposed to be a safe city. So they are developing their cities, and that would involve a lot of construction and operation of facilities. Of course, and these construction activities and their management later on, how they manage these operation of facilities, these should be all safe in terms of safety standards and safety requirements. Saudi Arabia is currently 19th largest economy. They would like to develop themselves into one of the 15 economies. And for that one, they need a lot of development, and that development includes all the safety and health elements built into it. If these are not built into it, they cannot achieve the position within the 15 economies. One of the target which they have set is the localization of oil gas sector. So what happens is that although they have upstream, midstream, and downstream industry very well established, and they are part of the global economy in terms of what they export, but most of their equipment, machines, they are coming from outside. So they do not have the expertise of manufacturing it within Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Right now, that the manufacturing ability is around 40%, so they would like to increase 75%. So these are the targets basically once they start increasing their localization. So those activities, operation processes under which they are doing the localization, they should be safe in terms of the safety standards which they are going to implement to ensure that there are no incidents and no accidents which happens while they are moving from 40% to 75%.
That's very interesting, Tahir. On that note, we're initially talking about the UN SDGs, and out of them, a lot of, let's say, mega trends have formulated and come out within the industry, and we always hear a lot of these mega trends, or let's say terms that come into it. So keeping that in mind, can you share with us some of the latest mega trends, but that are specific to health and safety transformations?
Very good question. I mean, I think this is what basically the world, the developed world, they are making maximum advantage of these mega trends. When we transform, and there are tools available, there are apps available, which are soft tools, which are available, which can be used to expedite this process, or basically to use them in a way that it saves times, resources, and other things, I mean, which are very crucial, which are supporting the transformation project. One of them, like transformative technologies, are common these days, like artificial intelligence, robotics, automation, and monitoring. Data monitoring is also, I mean, part of the transformative technologies, and the concept is that we are using it to assess the risks which we face in terms of health and safety and try to minimize it as low, what we call it, as low as possible, and use these artificial intelligence tools and robotics to gain maximum benefit towards the transformations. The next one is the advanced data analytics. I mean, we have been seeing a lot of data measurement and monitoring tools where these are then the data is gathered, information is generated. Based on the information, knowledge is generated, and that knowledge is used to do the analysis and predict what type of accidents may happen in future and how to develop the controls for them before they happen, and work on these controls to ensure that these never happen. Linked to this one are basically the part of the transformation system is that we train our employees. We train the employees within the organizations and give them enough awareness how to detect issues, how to go and see what type of near misses are there. And these transformation technologies and data analytics will help us to predict a certain pattern over the period of time where we would be able to address the issues which may arise in future in terms of incidents, accidents, and all safety and health related issues, even occupational health related issues, occupational safety related issues. So all these are basically part of the data analytics. And this is how the organizations are benefiting from this. Then expanding the risk horizon. This is another important element. The physical risks, we are very much used to it. We are addressing these on day-to-day basis. But soft risks are still comparatively a new field, which we don't address into our system. So those needs to be now part of the risk management process. So soft risks like stress, fatigue, mental health, well-being, that severely impacts our safety on the job, off the job. So we are mostly on the job. It really impacts our safety, and it really impacts our transformation program in terms of that. So if people are healthy, transformation will be healthy. So that's how we need to expand our risk horizon so that physical as well as soft risks are included. Workplace demographics. So we use computer-based trainings, visual training aids, and all these basically we take benefit of in terms of making that transformation at a quicker pace. So what we used to do in the past, these should be replaced by the computer-based trainings and visual aids. That will help us to transform much more quickly as compared to the manual aids which we were using in the past. Safety models, fresh and informed perspective on safety theories. So over a period of time, because the developed world has been practicing safety for a long time, and there are many best practices available. And based on those best practices, the, the models have been developed. So one of the typical model is like, which is a very proven model which we use for safety, is a plan, do, check, tech model. So we call it a system model. So first we plan, and then we implement, then we check ourselves, and then we act upon our checking output. So this is what basically the safety models they are using these days. However, based on our experience, we can always challenge these theories, because when we transform into an organization with operational excellence, we are in a much better position to challenge these theories and come up with the models and theories which are much more resilient and much more robust in nature.
Thank you very much, Tahir, for this summary. You really touched on a lot of points showing that in this evolving world, we really need to keep up with these mega trends, whether that's being technology, awareness about the soft risks that, as you rightfully said, they're growing more day by day, and we can see that at work in our daily lives. In addition to, even the, let's say, the academic or scientific part that comes up to models and whatnot. So it really shows how, crucial these are to HNS transformations. And on that note, how or what would be the main driver for organizations to undertake HNS transformations?
The only thing which basically drives the organizations these days towards HSC transformation or health and safety transformation is their incident data, incident record. So as long as they are experiencing very small incidents, they are not pushed towards a health and safety transformation or transformation. The moment they come across something which is very drastic, which is a catastrophic event happening in that organization, then they start thinking of the transforming their culture. As a proactive organization, they are always moving towards change, and that change is taking them towards transformation. So their change basically is not the change which we discussed earlier, like a small change which can be reverted back. No, their change means that they would like to change as an organizations and transform themselves into something which other organization would be looking at them in terms of leadership for health and safety and other basically support which they could extend in terms of health, safety, environment, or any other field which they have transformed into as a operational excellence model. So major accident is one of the main cause which forces the organizations to move towards the transformation. Poor HSE performance is another factor, because in terms of SDGs and local visions and all that on national level, regional level visions, which the countries are developing, the organizations, they have to open themselves. They have to be transparent. And when they are transparent, they are sharing their data, incident data and all that one. And when they share their data, which is not good, which is poor data, their image suffers a lot. And their the reputation and the image basically that suffers a lot, and they start thinking it's a sort of complex which eventually they develop, and that inferiority complex basically they forces them towards transformation, that they would like to improve this image and reputation. Another factor which is basically a desire to differentiate from other organizations. This is very few organizations, and this is also a very proactive approach. So it lot depends on the leadership within an organization. They set the tone for this one. So these are basically the three main drivers which normally forces organizations to move towards health and safety transformation.
Thanks for that, Tahir. I really like the way you really broke it down in terms of that. The main driver in all cases is actually the data or the incident data. And that really impacts the reputation. And whether an organization wants to be reactive or proactive, there are certain drivers to them in that case. So that was very insightful indeed. And thanks for sharing these. So on that note, if an organization is planning to undertake an H&S transformation, what are the main aspects that they should consider as part of that?
Good, very good question, George. And let me start with the definition of the culture. It's basically the way of life, especially the general beliefs of a particular group of people or organization at a particular time. This is the normal standard definition of culture. Now, if you break it down, this definition, it talks about general beliefs, means it talks about the values, it talks about the commitments within organizations, it talks about the overall vision of the organization. And so this is one of the important elements within which needs to be considered while undertaking a HS transformation. Organizational, that's what we call organizational culture. As they improve and go towards developing their culture or improving their culture, their organizations, they become more robust in terms of safety practices, which they are following. Because in order to achieve a cultural change or improvement in a safety culture, the continuous work has to be done. And that continuous work is not supposed to be stopped at any time, even if when they maintain or when they achieve that level of safety culture which they would like to achieve. For example, in the Bradley curve, George, you are very much accustomed to the Bradley curve. So the Bradley curve, the basic premise for that Bradley curve is that whenever we are going to improve safety culture, it's going to bring down our incident rate or incidents in a much simpler way. The incidents, number of incidents should reduce as the culture improves. So these are both related to each other. But as you go along and you achieve the highest level of the safety culture, you don't stop there because you need to continue work on that one, on that organizational culture, what achieve in order not only to maintain it, to further improve and achieve operational excellence. So that people and other organizations, they look towards your organization as an organization which is best in terms of doing job with that one, looking towards that organization as a leader in health and safety and the components which are part of the health and safety transformation. So this is one thing. The other thing, the most important one is the resources. So people, equipment, technologies, budgets, these needs to be there. So why these are important? Because if we are short of resources, we cannot undertake the transformation. So in order to have the transformation effective and continuous, we need to look into planning for the resources in terms of how many people we need, how many how much budget we need, what equipment we be, what technologies we should employ in order to achieve this transformation. Then the last one, the third one, which is, I would say, the mother of all is the systems policies. So the organizational culture and the resources, these will be part of the systems, but why it's important? Because if any one part of a system is missing, the entire transformation program would bog down. So when we talk about system, we are talking about the policies, procedures, training, education, all these type of which we will later touch upon more details. So these are the three basic things when we plan for the transformation. We should put focus on these three things very deeply.
Thank you very much, Tahir. Once again, you really simplified it and broke it down, and we can see the hierarchy in there in terms of the flow, that how first and foremost we should focus on the organizational culture, as that would be the main driver that would initiate the whole transformation, and that would eventually be backed up with the resources, because the transformation will not take place if you don't have sufficient resources. And finally, as you said, the mother of all and brings everything together is really having that foundation or the systems that will lock everything in place and ensure that it is sustained on the long run. And there was a lot of emphasis on organizational culture, and you even defined culture. So what I would like to ask is, how can you actually measure culture?
There are basically three main elements of the safety culture. So when we talk about the model, one of the element is the psychological. So we talk about attitudes and perceptions, and that includes basically attitudes, beliefs, values, and perceptions. So we talk about vision, and we talk about the policies in the beginning also, and those basically talks about these attitude, beliefs, values, and perception, and how people feel about safety, what is believed. This is the main crux of the psychological element. The second is the organizational element. So we talk about the structures, guidelines, systems, and processes. We touched upon the system. So here under the organizational element, we talk about the systems as well, processes as well. So as the system, when we refer to system, we are talking about, again, the same model: plan, do, check, act cycle. So plan, do, check, act is a complete system in place. So this could be applied anywhere to any process. So transformation is not different. So when we develop our transformation program, we should ensure that organizational element is also very much part of it. And those organizational sub-element should include the systems and processes in terms of planning, in terms of implementation, in terms of checking ourselves and uh, acting upon our output of the checking action, whether these are reviews, audits, and all that one. The third one is the behavior, daily actions. So like, for example, safety actions. So when typically, as you know, when we go to organizations to measure the safety cultures, we just observe their actions, how they act while performing their jobs. Their behaviors, we discuss with them, we interview them about the safety, and then we come up with a sort of evaluation in terms of behaviors, what sort of behaviors these organizations are having. So we are not particularly talking about a typical group of people within an organization. We are talking about people across the organization. So that means we are talking about the leadership, middle management, lower workers, and the people who are actually on the ground working. So all these are included in the behavioral aspects. Then how decisions are made basically within an organization. So this is this comes under the behavioral element also. How is the safety leadership? Is it at the topmost level only, or it's middle management and functional level, the leaderships are there, or only it's at the functional level and upper two are missing? So these are, we normally very go in detail and check these ones in terms of these needs to be there in terms of a culture transformation to happen. These three behaviors or three elements of the safety culture must be there. Another element, sub-element under the behavioral is the safety champions. In a lot of organizations, when we go, we find that leadership is there, middle management is there, but within the functional, within the departments, there are no safety representatives or champions. That is the biggest gap. And with this gap, we cannot move towards transformation because the actual change will happen at the floor level, at the level where people go in the field and they work. That The change will happen from there, and it will sort of move up. And once the leadership, top leadership is there, middle management leadership is there, so it's going to be very effective in terms of it. So safety champions are another important element of the transformation process. And then another one is competence. So you assign people, or you put people there who are, let's say, safety champions or middle safety leadership and top leadership. But if these are not competent, it's going to be a big problem. So the change, the transformation cannot happen if you don't qualify them, if you don't train them, if you don't educate them in terms of safety, including the top leadership. So having a broad vision in terms of safety is a good thing to have. But if the top management is not aware of how basically to drive this down the organization, so it will be either the waste of time, it will take much more time as compared to what it should be taking. And sometimes it could fail, it could fire back in terms of the transformation. So these are important things. So going at the floor level, normally we see within organization, when we go and see that whether the organization is really transforming themselves in terms of safety, we normally judge that organization in terms of whether the safety is their highest priority or not. And that comes from the top leadership up to the down, the worker level. And then another thing which we normally would like to judge is accountability. So that means if safety KPIs or goals are established, any accountability defined for those ones. If people are not accountable for the actions which they are doing, so it's bound to fail. The transformation would not happen at all. Then the decision making is, like I discussed it, it's very important at the functional level decision making. So if a job is not safe, is there a decision making process there? Can an employee refuse to perform that job because it's not safe? So that has to be at the functional level. People should be empowered to take these decisions. Then safety supervisors, they are also important element. We look into their role, the support which they should be receiving from the management. Then we also see that the improvement is continuous or not. Another important element which we normally look into is the management communication, how the management communicates, cascades down to the to every employee of the organization. That is very crucial to the transformation. Risk mitigation measures. So it's not the job of just the safety department to mitigate the risk. So all are involved. It's a teamwork effort. So once the controls are established, the controls are implemented by the people in the field. So we normally transformation, the foundation of the transformation basically relies on the risk mitigation measures. Employees are part of the regular meeting. We also look into it, whether they are part of the day-to-day meetings on safety or not. This is what we look into because this will drive the organization towards transformation. And procedures, safety procedure are accessible, and employee surveys and this show the positive results. So these were few at the floor level which I wanted to touch upon, because the high level culture, when we measure, it's something which normally employees sometimes they don't understand. And so when these are translated into specific actions, it's much easier to understand, and then it becomes much easier to transform yourself into a better culture in terms of safety.
Thank you again, Tahir. Really, again, I would say a complex concept that was broken down into simple bits and pieces, which again, three main aspects to be considered as part of culture: psychological, behavioral, and organizational. And we can really see the value of breaking it down into these three and how they all interact, because this is really the value when we look at culture assessments. It really allows us to understand where the problem is, and accordingly, an accurate prescription or solution or action can be put in place. And you highlighted on a lot of relevant points, starting from the top of the organization in terms of, the awareness and the competence of leadership and their commitment when it comes to health and safety, all the way down to the bottom when it comes to, let's say, the floor level staff, and how the accountabilities are clear amongst them, and how capacity building and competence is important throughout the whole process. And again, to really be able to sustain all this, again, the monitoring and measuring of all this in terms of the culture and everything, all the different aspects to it should be in place. So that was a great summary, Tahir. And Tahir, I really have to thank you very much. I have thoroughly enjoyed this discussion. Just to summarize, we have touched on many points that are relevant, again, going back to the UN SDGs and specifically the KSA Vision 2030. We touched on why health and safety is such a crucial component of this vision. And we also understood the difference between a change and transformation with the great example that you've given about the table. And more so, we looked into what are the latest mega trends that are relevant to health and safety transformations, and what drives organizations to undertake these transformations, and what should they consider when they undertake them. And more so, we focused on the on two main aspects, which really are the organizational culture, understanding what a culture is, how is it measured, and why is it so crucial, again, to transformations, in addition to management systems, which we just ended the discussion with, in terms of how they are the foundation and how everything integrates within the management system to sustain it. Once again, Tahir, thank you very much for your time and for sharing, all these thoughts and insights. I really hope that our listeners enjoyed it and found it insightful as well. So please, to our audience, thank you again for listening all the way through. And please make sure you leave us a comment if today's episode has sparked your interest. And don't forget to join us in the following talks. So stay tuned. Thank you, everyone.